has been at least 2 weeks, I think, since I actually filmed anything in the garage that was of use. Certainly in terms of progress in the car, but a lot has actually happened. It's been kind of hard to film since I pulled... this is the antenna off the back of the car. I unscrewed it because it's fugly and I'm going to use it as my pointer stick. But since I pulled the wagon in the garage, it's been kind of hard to get around with stuff, and the tripod and camera included, so I also don't think it's super fun to watch someone unplug something, plug it back in, rewire 18 different things because you can't read a diagram the first time, and then things change and you gotta redo stuff, and it's probably not super fun. But what I can do is show you what it looks like now and show you how I got here, because a lot has really gone on. As you can see, there's some colorful bits around the car now. It's not just plain peasant fleet spec white. It's got some green and black going on. So I think I might just set the tripod up in a couple spots in here and then just point and talk about stuff. Like right here. Let's talk about these. These are new headlights. Look here. This is me installing them. I was cleaning out the garage, trying to just make some space to work, because, you know, it's how it gets when you get into a project. But I realized I bought new headlights from Australia a couple months ago, actually. And because this one, all the tabs are broken in it. Yeah, and they're gross. So I figured I might as well put these on the car. And originally I didn't, because I don't want to damage them while I'm doing other stuff. But I think might be past that point. At least I hope so. So yeah, I'm gonna get these pulled off and put those on. I did film that. But these are just TYC headlights from eBay Australia. It's like their tier 1 supplier for OEMs, so these are basically OEM quality lights. The nice part is they're made for right-hand drive, so the offset in the left and right headlights is correct. A lot of guys will import those for left-hand drive ones, but then just kind of use them anyway. Does it really matter? I don't think so. But new headlights, they look way better. When I took off the passenger side one tab was halfway held on out of the 4 tabs that existed, so not great. These look better. Big win. Okay, so in this corner / side of the engine bay, you can see the stuff that my buddy Corey Misko welded up for me that I designed and had some cuts and bend. This is the coolant overflow, this one here, and there's a port on the back side, so there's no exposed hoses or anything. It's pretty clean. This one will be the wiper fluid, the motor, also on the back side. I can show you that in just a second. That will be pretty slick as well, as long as it holds water through the OEM grommet. That'll be nice. So real clean, same panel as the Haltech one on the other side. It's just mirrored, and then I made this tank. Pretty cool. These are Racetronics caps. These are -20 ORBs, and I'm gonna laser engrave some logos on the top at some point when I have free time. Back here, this is the thing that Corey Misko fixed up for me because I put the fill cap way too low for the intercooler brick that's in here. This needs to be a little bit higher. I don't know if you can also see there's a small cutout in the insulator on the hood to clear this, but it does clear the sheet metal, so easy fix, big win. You can also probably see this hot pink line back here. This is the fluid level for the supercharger coolant, and I had originally, I knew I wanted to use 2 different colors of coolant in the car. One for, engine cooling system, the other one for the supercharger. That way it's just easier to detect leaks, figure out what system is leaking. But when I went to the store, they only had yellow and green, whatever. So I used yellow and green. And then I realized that because I play disc golf and I like to do things on my own, I had dyed a couple of my discs, and I have a huge selection of dye. And so in a little clear plastic cup, I tested out some dye and some of the yellow coolant, and it worked really well. So I put a tiny bit in here with the pump running. Boom, now it's hot pink. Should be a lot easier to detect versus the green stuff. pretty hard to see back here, but I got my catch can in the corner with the outlet up here. The two lines come out of the side. They go right to the side of this plate with a bulkhead fitting, and then one of them goes all the way to that valve cover over there, and then this one has a TPU 3D printed hose because there's no combination of hose or fittings that exist in the world that would make that tight of a bend 180 thing. So we'll see how that holds up, but it's there and it looks good. So all of this will be covered by the rain tray that goes all the way across at the bottom of the windshield, and the plastic rain tray will clip in to these holes here. They're in the same factory location, so that'll be pretty slick. The other thing, I ended up buying new ignition coils because when I rearranged everything to put the wagon in here, the set of shelves these were on fell over. I was working with a pretty tight amount of room. I couldn't completely unload the shelves. But anyways, a couple of them broke. They were rusty. They need to be replaced anyway. So I got some, not GM genuine ones. They are Delphi genuine ones though, which is the OEM supplier. So basically the same thing. But because they don't have a GM part number on them, they're a little bit cheaper. So over here, I put a bunch of work into that aftermarket snout that was pre-ported for the Supercharger, and it was making some noise, and it wouldn't idle. So I went back to the stock one, and it idles, and I don't care because it runs, and that's what matters right now. So I had to pull the water pump, all of the serpentine stuff, to swap that out, reseal it with RTV. I took apart the throttle body because it was sticking, fixed that, put it all back together. It idles fine now, it's great. Lance is tuned idle and it's minty. But the other thing you can see here is my over the radiator air intake setup with my 3D printed TPU, big flexible guy, air filter cover. And it's pretty close to the Supercharger pulley. It's rubbing a little bit. I don't really care for now. This is the prototype. Unfortunately, I tried to have this printed on Craft Cloud because I couldn't print it in one piece big enough. And they accepted the order, and then the next day they said, hey, we don't really want to print that out of that material that big, so here's your money back. So I ended up printing it in two pieces, and then I used the soldering iron to mechanically attach the two halves together. I'm not super worried. It's pre-throttle body. If it leaks or something, it's fine. The amount of dirt that can get in through there is probably very minimal, but I think it looks sweet. It fits. It's got my logo, well, it did before I soldering ironed over it. I think I'm going to have a real one of these made out of silicone. That'll be the sweetness. Yeah. Cool. Moving on. Got AN lines up here that I made and crimped at Lance's, and then I had to make new ends with swivels because of the way I crimped them. The orientation was like a little bit off, but also it was just nicer to have the swivels so they can actually move a little bit. That's kind of how all the hoses ended up working, actually. So a lot of them have one end crimped, and then I went back and did the manual make your own AN line with the swivel end. That way things are happier. Obviously it costs more money to do it twice, but just note for future reference, you should always have a swivel in there to make your life way, way easier. Let's see. But in the engine bay, that's like it, man. There's not anything else going on in here. So all of the wiring goes in over here. There's a big grommet back there. I've cut some of it to allow for the massive amount of wires that have to go through it. But all of this gets covered with the wiper motor. So you'll never see any of that, which is awesome. And then the rain tray will cover all of that too. So big win, super clean. This is everything in the engine bay. It needs to be cleaned actually from like all of the fluids that have burped while bleeding the system, but like this is it, man. There's nothing else to go in here. You can see I've got my billet strut mounts. That's actually what's machining in the background. I'll do another big batch of those. but I picked some anodized black ones for myself. These are the Petters coilovers that are on it right now. C2B suspension is really dragging their feet. I think we're 2.5 months behind the original timeline of when I was supposed to get airbags. So right now we're balling on coilovers, and that's fine because they work and they're sweet, and Petters does good stuff. Let's move to the front end. So this is the cooling stack of everything, but when I made the lines for the transmission cooler to use the stock cooler, I kind of guessed where they went because I didn't have the right fittings to attach to it. And then when I bought the fittings, so the cooling loop for the transmission from the factory goes from the transmission to the radiator in the bottom in a separate cooling loop, and then out of that and into a transmission cooler with a thermostat on it, which you don't really need, but whatever. I was planning to go into the one side of the radiator, out of that radiator, and into here. Well, the fittings for the back of the radiator for the transmission cooler they stuck out too far and they run into the subframe, whatever. So I just deleted that. I plugged those holes in the bottom of the radiator. I got a different, bigger transmission cooler because, you know, we're like making power and stuff. And made some custom mounts here. So I took this, I made this bracket for the interchiller, right? It just reuses the bolts for the bumper bracket, and then has some holes in it. It's really simple for mounting the interchiller. And then I welded on some more brackets for the transmission cooler, and those lines work, and it's all fine and dandy. There's a nice little bracket that bends up and goes to the over the radiator mount bracket, and so that has a nice air gap behind it to the AC condenser. So that's all sweetness. The interchiller setup seems to be working. I have to recharge the AC for the third time now because after I finally got it charged the second time, the high pressure Schrader valve is leaking, and that's not cool at all. Which is weird because I pulled a vacuum and it held the vacuum, but now it leaks. So what are you gonna do? I have another one, and I bought more Freon just in case, but yeah. So, cooling stack situation, good. This is what's cooling the supercharger, the air that's going into that. Great. This is keeping the transmission from getting too hot. Great. Let's go into the passenger fender area and see what's going on in there. One thing you can see is I have wheels and tires on the car. I had a customer want me to design some aero discs for this set of wheels that he has in a matching 20-inch size. These are 19 by 10s. He has 20s on his C8, and he wanted these aero discs. And so I was like, oh, it'd just be easier if you just left me one of these to work with. And he's like, oh, I'm selling them. And I was like, oh, don't tempt me with a good time, because clearly the fitment is minty. So my wide body wheels are here, but I'm not going to run the wide body right now because I want to drive the car. That wasn't my plan, but driving the car is more important than having a wide body at the moment. I'd like to make the multiple events before the fall and before Danielle and I leave for our honeymoon and wedding and whatnot, so just rock it like this. It's pretty insane that these backup wheels are HREs, but they are sweet, and kudos to that customer. Basically traded some of my work, and then I added some cash on top for the wheels, and then I bought some super Chinese tires, some Cosmo Mucho Machos that my drift buddy Corey said wouldn't explode on me. They were $80 a tire from Walmart, so that's where we're at there. If I pull that off, where's my pointer? Okay, so for one, brake calipers are on. These new rotors are on. I think in the first, second video of the car, I had the wrong ones. I had stock SS ones. We don't want that. So whatever. These are the bigger ZL ones. They're awesome. So back here, you can see this is the wiper pump, cleverly hidden behind that, reservoir on the other side. And this is the outlet to the radiator for the coolant overflow. Wiring going up here nicely. This right here is a solenoid valve for the interchiller, so you can run the Interchiller by itself with the AC on, but the car not getting AC in the cabin. They recommend that for like drag racing and stuff because the AC in the cabin is gonna condensate and drip way more, and that normally drips on the bottom of the car. And if you're at the drag strip, that's a no bueno. So, anyways, I got that. I doubt I'll ever really use it, but it's there, wired in. All the AC hoses are crimped. Yeah. Let's look down here. Ow. Let's look down here in this other corner. Kind of hard to see, but this is my EWP 150 pump. I've got that plumbed in with my AN lines that go to the Supercharger tank. So this one here is the outlet from the tank, and it feeds all the way to the Interchiller, and the other one comes all the way back up and back to the Supercharger. This other little guy here that's just chilling, this little ball valve, this is actually the drain for the catch can, because it's up in this corner, and I didn't want to have to try to reach my hand down there and take the rain tray off and all that stuff every time I need to drain the catch can. So that's all cleverly in here. I think I'm going to be able to get most of the fender liner back in. And this fender is just chilling here for a moment just so I could see the fitment on the wheel, but this side's pretty much ready to go back together. I don't think there's anything else I need to do in here. Oh, there are some new sway bar end links because I sawzawed the ones out of the Caprice. It was just the easiest way to get them off because they were all rusty, and that Caprice is now gone. Someone bought the shell, so it's pretty dope. Yeah, let's go to the other tire wall though. Alright, a lot of stuff going on in here pretty clearly. I've got some cleanup left to do with like organizing wiring just to make it look nicer, but it is mostly wrapped aside from the one or two things that I ended up routing after it's wrapped, but it's the split loom, so I just haven't gone back and cut all the zip ties and put them back in. I did end up moving the fuse box like another 1.5 inches forward just to give more clearance to the tire. There was room for it, easy enough. I added 2 more rib nuts in the frame rail, no big deal. It has been really convenient to run everything else in the car. So like this battery cable here, I made this from the Caprice trunk battery to starter post area. Same thing that this car has, but I just went and took this gigantic 4-aught cable out of the Caprice and used it here. Seems to be working great. So this post here goes to the starter. Then there's another one of these that goes from the starter to the alternator, and that is also where the power for the electronic power steering is being picked up for the actual motor itself. But there's a lot of inputs and outputs here that are just chilling and dangling. Everything gets power, the car runs. It's been like a nightmare trying to make all the BCM CAN stuff happy. That's kind of where I'm at right now. I don't really care if a lot of stuff doesn't work as long as the car runs and drives and has AC, because it'll probably be 3,000 degrees in Indy, but that's where the wiring is. I just got the transmission stuff hooked up today, which actually, fun fact, see what I had to do transmission-wise here. So here in front of me are 2 different 10L80s. This is the one that was, well, just in the wagon. Man, that's gross. All the fluid's all over the floor, as you might expect. Every time you pull a transmission, that's kind of what happens magically. As much as you don't want it to. Anyways, so this is an ETRS 10L80 that is 2-wheel drive. Unfortunately, maybe fortunately, when I bought this, I didn't think that the ETRS, which would be beep boop, select what gear you want to be in, would be that difficult. Turns out, pretty difficult, and if I want to drive the car in the next 2 or 3 months, probably, then this is a better option. So this is a 2020 10L80 4-wheel drive, non-ETRS. So it still uses a cable linkage on the side. You can see the brackets over there still. So the problem is the wagon doesn't have 4-wheel drive. This has 2-wheel drive, that has 4-wheel drive. I've got to take both of them apart, swap the tail shafts, which unfortunately you can't just do like a 6L80 or a 4L80 from the back. You have to take the entire drum assembly out, swap them, put the drum assembly back. I don't imagine this is going to be fun. I just spent the last 3 hours getting this transmission out of the car, but I'd like to have it back in before Monday. It's currently Saturday at 5 o'clock. So, yeah, cue the time lapse of me taking these apart, I guess. Basically, I wanted to use the fancy ETRS push button, just like the gear guy, and I had the trans in, and I made that mount for the keypad and all that stuff. Well, here's what it looks like now. Well, as you can see, I got like laptop and wiring and cabling and crap everywhere, but the dash is in, like kind of, you know, I put all the trim back in. The radio's in. This is the new ZL1 steering wheel, so suede. I put the Holden airbag on it, because, you know, that makes sense. But the TCM for the transmission is down here, so that'll get mounted up in the dash. But you see, what had happened was I tried to do things that no one had ever done before, which in my head sounds awesome, but in reality it's not super easy. And with my timeline being as tight as it is, like today is August 10th, a little behind, which is kind of to be expected for what I'm trying to do. But it's easier to buy another 10-speed that had a mechanical linkage on the side, so like an earlier one, like the one I bought was from 2020, and put that in, put the original shifter back in, which I did, you can see it back there, and then get the transmission running that way, because that's already a mostly known thing. So what I'm in the process of doing now is like collecting CAN data, sniffing the CAN data, not physically, but that's what you call it when you're trying to figure out what CAN messages are what. And so trying to do all that to make the transmission run and shift and not explode, because it turns out that the transmission controller will say, hey, I want to shift, can you reduce torque engine? Engine's like, yes or no, and it does it or it doesn't. But then the TCM, transmission control module, whatever, doesn't care if it says yes or no, it just does it anyway. So if you don't reduce that engine torque, the clutches in the transmission just explode. It's expecting to see, you know, like an 80% reduction in torque, and then it sees none, and it's just like, yeah, whatever, I'm gonna shift, and then it's how you end up chirping the tires in second, third, and fourth, and whatever. So trying to make all of that high-level CAN electrical goodness happy, which is not something I've really dealt with a whole lot before. And I'm not stupid, but I'm not literate in that yet, so tap into a lot of people's... So I'm trying to get help from a lot of different people, and I'm on my schedule, and I can't make them on my schedule. There's a lot of people helping me, which I'm grateful for. It's taking its sweet time, though, and I want to get this thing on the road. Because I don't want to drive it, I don't want to get it, you know, running the day before Indy and driving and be like, oh, yep, now I'm going to drive it 5 hours. No, I want to put like a couple 100 miles on it before I decide to do that. But I moved the CAN keypad, because it was where the shifter is now, so it's sitting in front of the shifter. I made a little, you know, printed bracket for that. The can hub, I ended up switching to an 8-port can hub because I needed it for debugging to be able to attach the can network here. I need it for the gateway to go from the TCM to the East or to the Rebel, and then I also need it for the mufflers for the bimodal valve in those. So now I have a couple extra. I didn't need 8. I could have gotten away with, 6, but who knows? Maybe I'll become literate in can, and then I'll just add a bunch of stuff to the can network. But the interior is mostly put back together. The glove box is sitting in the passenger seat because I was going to try to put some stuff over there, whatever. So all I got to do is put the glove box back in, and the entire interior is done. So that being said, it's like ready to drive-ish that way. I can't really show you underneath, but the full exhaust is in. Here's how I did that. I just wrapped up the fuel lines under the car, so now it's time to put in the exhaust. That was pretty much the only thing keeping me from finishing that. So let's unbox the rest of these parts from Xforce and see what's in here. Little box. Not a box. Not a box. Muffler. And another muffler. These are the cat deletes that go with the headers. These are the exhaust tips. Shiny. Shiny. Yeah, that's gonna look sick. Break out the other one here. Yeah, buddy. These look like they have nice little clamp-on guys. Some gaskets and bolts for the cat deletes. Let's open up this box. This is the controller for the mufflers, for the valves. I also, they were fortunate, or they were nice enough to send me the smart box that goes with this so that I can control it from the Haltech can pad, which is pretty sweet, and from my phone, which I guess also sweet. So yeah, that's really cool. Those two things play together, and I guess I should show you where they go. Let's see. Rubber nub, don't need that. Where's my pocket knife? Under here somewhere. Yeah. Okay. Tape. Put it in there. So this is where the magic happens. This little motor here turns a little butterfly valve in there, and with the normal controller, it's just on or off, I think. And then with the smart box and the app, or the Haltech can keypad, you can adjust the position, kind of the whole range, and that way you can adjust the volume to where you want it, which is pretty sweet because I'm not 19 years old anymore and I don't want everything straight piped. But the way this works is there's another channel in the muffler, and so when the valve is closed, it goes through that, which is a lot smaller and more restrictive. So when you open them, it's kind of like a dump valve, but far more better integration than just open valve. So both mufflers are like that. So you get one on each side. And then this box should be all the goodies to connect everything from the headers to the mufflers. So another bag of hardware, some band clamps, and the gaskets for the mufflers. Get rid of that box. All right. Shoot. Yeah, this is gonna be so sick. The instructions are in here as well. This one is a mirror of the one I just opened. Yep, so those two pieces, fairly identical. Another O2 bung, crazy. Yeah. So that is the tube that attaches to the header. Because of the size of the exhaust, there is a new plate that goes between the two frame rails. Yep. The other header attachment tube. And finally, what they call the hot dog. I guess this is a dual hot dog. So, two hot dogs, right? Resonators. And a full X pipe. So, that looks pretty sick. This part goes right underneath the drive shaft. So, I'm not gonna be able to film a whole, like anything under there until I'm done, just because there's not a lot of room. But this is gonna sound pretty sick, and I think that's the part that you probably care about more. So, I'm gonna work on getting this installed, and then do a little like walk around thing afterwards. Yesterday, I got the full Xforce exhaust on. It's made for every version of this platform. It's made to fit. So there's the 4-inch longer wheelbase version, and then there's a bunch of different bumper options. Unfortunately, again, because I have the super ultra peasant spec model, even at fully compressed adjustment, the tips stick out pretty far. And just the tip is fine if it's, you know, more like this, I want to say. This is much more my speed. Some people would be all about that, probably whoever's in the background. But so what I did is, like, these have just a little slot with a little bolty clamp dude. So you can just bolt it right onto the end of the muffler. And so what I did is I just converted this to, I just took it to the bandsaw and took off like 2.5 inches. And then I just converted it back to a normal band clamp style with some slots in it. So these mufflers are really nice because they have like a slotted adjustment tab at the top so you can align it in the bumper properly. So I've got this one aligned in the bumper. I'm gonna go trim that one. But the other thing I gotta do is this valence clipped on here and went underneath. And you can see it's not perfectly symmetrical, the exhaust cutouts, because the V6 only had a single side exhaust. But these tips are so big, giggity, that I think what I'm gonna end up doing is just kind of cutting these here and just trying to match the bumper profile behind it. But also I got to cut, the reason this came off originally is to put the hitch in, and I don't know if you can see in there, but there's a nice little trim template for the hitch. So I got to trim that out, trim up the edges, and get the tips clipped on in the proper spot, and then I can start wiring up the valves. So let's do it. As you can see, I got the exhaust tips fitted. I got the valence panel put back in and trimmed around the hitch. It's not perfect, but I mean, I trimmed off a lot. I also got the bumper attached to that aluminum panel underneath the spare tire well that I made a long time ago for the air tank and air compressors. So I put some riv nuts in the bottom of that, bolted the bumper to it, valence clips into the bumper. Eventually, I think I'll make a new valence that's more aggressive. I'll do a printed one, kind of like the wing up top, but for now I think this looks pretty good. So easy solution for the exhaust. Shout out to Xforce for high quality product. Don't shout out me for having a weird peasant spec car, but I got it fitted and it looks pretty good. So I got to get the wiring done, but I think for now I'm gonna switch to doing some more Haltech stuff so I can get the car up and running, and then I'll come back and do the valve wiring when I hook it up to the Haltech. So one more thing checked off the list. Yeah, so the exhaust is in, the new transmission is in. I actually ended up buying a 4-wheel drive transmission. It's the cheapest local one I could find. There's only like 3 total options, and I just picked, I think they were all 4-wheel drive, but what I had to do is take the one I had in here before, the ETRS one, completely apart, because you can only switch the 10-speed from a 4-wheel drive to a 2-wheel drive if you take all the guts out of the transmission first. It's not like the older transmissions where you can just do that all at the back of the trans from the outside. Whatever. I took both transes apart, swapped the tail shafts, put them back together, slammed it back in here. That took me the better part of a weekend. I think I started like Saturday at noon and I was done Friday or Sunday at like 8 p.m. or whatever. But that's in. My drive shaft still works. That's great. Exhaust still works. Great. It's hooked up to the shifter. Great. Big setback, yeah, kind of, but also a couple steps forward because now we can control it easier than the one that is completely unknown. So, what else has happened? My buddy Charlie stopped by. He helped me bleed the brakes, so the brakes are ready to go also. I need to run a vacuum line to the booster, but otherwise they're done. The ABS currently is not going to work because I haven't hooked it up to the Haltech and figured all that out, and I don't care. I don't need ABS, period, really. But I don't need it right now. I don't need it to drive. It'll be fine. What else? Cruise control, I'm about to try and figure out because that's going to be done through the Haltech. I'm going to see if I can still use the buttons on the steering wheel. If not, I now have 5 open spaces on the CAN keypad I didn't have before because I'm not using it to shift gears, or select gears I should say. And then I also need to figure out the tap up, tap down shifting using the paddles on the ZL1 wheel. That's just a matter of figuring out the pinout on the back of the connector of the steering wheel and then routing that to the Haltech also, which I will probably do through the screen because it has a bunch of extra inputs and outputs. And I haven't used really any of them. It does kind of suck because I put the whole dash back together, but that's easy. It's like 5 minutes of work to get back to where I was. And then oh, on the dash, check this out. Yeah, so check this out. Boom. Logo, background, on brand. Ignore the beeping, it's because the door's open and the aftermarket radio sucks. But, look at this! I made my own layout, this is sick. So I got a big blank section here, that's where the transmission stuff's gonna go when we get that figured out, but it's got boost and intake temp and coolant temp and speed and RPM and all that jazz, and it all seems to be working. Also, I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, turn signal works. That's sick. I think the high beams work too. Oh, I think I gotta turn them on over here. hit the thing. Yeah, now I got a high beam indicator over there. That's pretty cool. So this is all wired up to good stuff. The fuel level sensor is connected now. That seems to be working in reverse, so that's an easy fix too. But this is baller. And I'm just gonna like, there's not a good way for me to put you in here. But you can see the CAN keypad up there now. It's a pretty cool place to put it. I was gonna put it in the center console bin, but because the start button's on it, I thought that probably wasn't a great idea. And it just wasn't easy to get to, because there's a data log button on there, and an override button for all the fans and the pumps and whatever, so didn't want to deal with that if I was like in a panic and have to like open the console and then try to hit buttons while I can't be looking forward at the same time. So that seems to be good. That's awesome. Dash, good. Interior, good. Oh, hey, yeah, look, there's some roof racks up here, because I went and moved my 6x12 enclosed trailer, and I used the Tahoe to do it, and I just happened to like look down while I was, putting I've got an electric lift on the front for the hitch ball, but I watched it go down, and then the Tahoe is the truck, right? Ish. And it just was like, I was like, you know what? I don't think the Wagon's going to be super happy on coilovers doing that, because there's only like 1.5 inches of suspension travel back there anyway. So I'll just get an Airbnb for Danielle and I and Indy, and we'll use the roof racks for the big awning, and I don't remember what else I was going to put up here. I don't know, whatever. All the stuff will go in here. I have a cargo carrier, little bin that attaches to the back of the hitch. We'll use that. Put all the products and stuff on that, and then our stuff can be in the car, and we'll pull whatever else on the roof, and that'll get us to Indian Bag. It'll probably be more comfortable of a drive than trying to tow that trailer that's probably a little bit bigger than this should tow without brakes on it. So that's a plus. I've had these since like January when they came back in stock. This is like super new old stock. Like it has like the blue film on like all of the shiny bits, and you can't take it off. It's permanently attached now. It's that old. One thing I do need to figure out, I can't open the hatch currently because, of course, it won't, like, in stock form, the car won't let you open the hatch unless the vehicle's in park, which kind of makes sense, but isn't really something you should ever have to worry about, and it's not really something you have to care about. But because I have a different transmission and a different ECU, the body control module, the BCM, doesn't currently know when the vehicle's in park. Might be able to fix that with, the trans stuff we're doing, but there's not an easy way for me to, it's not just like I need to send 12 volts here and open the latch. No, there's a control module and all this other crap back there, and so gotta figure that out. I really just want to put a cable latch back there, because why wouldn't it be? And then I'll just run that to like, I don't know, rear passenger door or something. But anyways, so I gotta figure that out. Otherwise, putting all that stuff in the back of here to take to Indy is gonna be a nightmare. Yeah. So there's that. What else? Got wheels, got tires, got brakes, got steering. I don't know if the electric power steering works or not. Clearly, car's not on the ground. Something else I don't have is an alignment, and that is possible, but also I need to like make sure the transmission works before I try to drive it to a alignment shop, and I don't want to trailer it to an alignment shop. How am I going to get it on the trailer? So anyways, I'm going to probably just do a quick tape measure alignment for a little bit to get by. I don't care about these tires whatsoever, as long as it doesn't, yeet me off the road in one direction or the other. That's all that matters. So I think that's good. That'll work. Suspension, all hunky-dory. The air tank is in the trunk that matches the powder coat for these, which is cool. It's not hooked up to the compressors because there's no need without the bags, so I haven't wired any of that. And I feel really bad to my other sponsor, Ruin Air, because I made that sweet, little screen mount that was behind the CAN keypad, and now I got to find a new home for that because I'm back to a normal peasant shifter. But I also feel bad because I was, gonna have this thing on bags, and it still will be eventually, but I was gonna have all that wired up and working and whatnot. And honestly, that would make having the trailer behind it a little bit easier, because then I could just up the pressure in the back. But regardless, that'll happen in the future, not for Labor Day. I'm sure there's some other stuff I haven't thought about, like the fact that I can smell fuel right now from where I just turn the key on, and I need to figure out where that's coming from. I gotta put the body back on, I guess. I gotta put this fender back on, I gotta put the front bumper on. It is disappointing that I'm gonna drive this around with that fugly front bumper, but at least it'll drive, and it'll probably be fast, so that part will be cool. Disappointed about not having the wide body done. I will have the wing done. That's got Bondo on it. I need to sand it some more. Doing that in between working and machining and trying to figure out the CAN network stuff. So a lot has happened. I've tried to film as much of it as I can. It's not really like a how-to series, right? It's just like, this is what I'm doing in my garage. Watch me talk to myself. But all the sponsors have been great. Everything has mostly gone together. I've had to redo a couple things, like the snout and some of the wiring that needed to be switched around. And I think now I'm in the home stretch, and hopefully by the end of this week I can test the transmission, and then hopefully just try to put a bunch of miles on it, tuning the motor. So like, big shout out to Lance at R&T for remote tuning idle a bunch of times, trying to figure out why it wouldn't idle, and then turns out it was the snout and whatever. So got that sorted, and now it idles perfect, and the motor seems happy, which is great. It sounds good. Just gotta put it back together and go drive it. So that's kind of where I'm at. I know it's not super exciting to just see me talk about stuff. Maybe it is. Maybe that's why you're watching it. I don't know. But got the Labor Day event. It's gonna be huge. I think there's gonna be like, I don't know, I think last year was almost like 560 cars or 540 cars or something. I'm pretty sure this year they're like planning to park like over 600. I've got a bunch of stuff I'm taking as a vendor. I'm donating a set of strut mounts. So if you buy a raffle ticket at the event, you might win some strut mounts. I'm not super popular, so you're probably only going to buy like 2 raffle tickets for my stuff. And then, yeah, I think it's just going to be a super cool event. I'm going to go to the drag event the night before and just hang out and watch that. And then Sunday they're doing like a breakfast, and so that'll kind of be like our wind down, debrief with everyone, and then drive 5 hours home on Sunday. So I'm going to try to keep filming as much as I can, but if it's just me sitting behind the computer, like, trying to figure out CAN messages, I'm not going to do that to you guys. I don't want to film that. It's frustrating for me to even do it, period. So, like, adding that in isn't going to help. But, yeah, I mean, the car is badass. I keep looking at it, and I'm like, it's white, it's gross, but it's still a sick wagon that doesn't exist here normally. I'm going to do some vinyl graphics, like some branded stuff on the side just for the Labor Day event, but it'll get the full wrap after the wide body's done. I don't want to wrap it twice, that's stupid. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching me ramble, and I hope you enjoyed the update. Eventually I'll string together a bunch of other stuff I filmed in the past and get you caught up that way. But this is IPFRacing. Sometimes that's how it goes. I'm Zach, and that is sometimes how I do things. So, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, do the thing, because your boy needs money.